So hello everyone and welcome to our communal gathering of yoga readers. I am very happy to see you all today. And we are here because we just finished reading The Tree of Yoga by B.K.S. Iyengar. We met after each chapter that we've read and we discussed it together. And we even had a session with Eyal Shifroni, who is a senior Iyengar yoga teacher who published 8 books and is working now on more books of Iyengar yoga. And he actually translated Tree of Yoga into Hebrew, and he had a chance to talk with B.K.S. Iyengar about the book, about its significance, about themes that occurred in the book. So he shared with us his experience dealing with the Tree of Yoga, and for me it was quite interesting. So I would like to share with you very shortly what I had in mind for our communal gathering today. First, I wanted to let you know about yoga readers. I have some statistics gathered for you today based on the survey that many of you filled about who we are as a community. And then we will move on to discussing your experiences while reading The Tree of Yoga. I would be very happy to hear from you online, or those of you who are watching the recordings. Please feel free to reach out and write to me via email or WhatsApp or Facebook or however you can. And then in our third section, I will reveal our next reading. So I just want to share that when I envisioned yoga readers, I thought about creating an online space where yoga practitioners and teachers from around the world can come together to think and discuss and grow together. So to read books about yoga, and specifically I thought about the Iyengar yoga books, and to discuss how these teachings relate to our everyday life, to our everyday yoga practice. And then, as we are sharing thoughts together, we can go out from the limitations of our mind and our interpretations of whatever we are reading. And through an exchange of ideas, we can grow together as a community. And when I'm asked, how is this different from a book club? I have to say that this is not a book club. This is a yogic reading community. So the differences that I see is that it's not that we are just reading a book and then, let's say, that we meet at the end of the reading of the book and we exchange our experiences about reading it. But since most of you are yoga teachers, and I think all of you are yoga practitioners, you embody the teachings of yoga. You manifest them, you experience them. So as you are reading whatever is in the book, you are relating to it through your physical experiences. And when you go and you practice, you have the text, you have the book, you have the ideas in your mind. So it goes out from the book into our bodies. And then as we share these embodied experiences, that becomes much more than just reading what it is. Some of you even shared that you take the teachings from whatever we read and you take them into your yoga classes and you pass them on to your students, which is really heartwarming for me. And the discussions we had in our meetings included not only whatever we read, but also there were tips, there were this mutual helping environment between teachers and students who were asking for advice in the breakout rooms, which was quite amazing. And I felt that many people are really opening up and sharing personal stories and experiences. So I see it much more than just reading a book. So this online community is not just about the Zoom sessions, because obviously, as a global community, we can't find a suitable time for us all to meet. When I checked, for an example, on Facebook, when is the group most alive? When is the group working on Facebook? I realized that for me, it's 4 a.m., I think, in the middle of the week, so on a weekday. So even I can't make it to the most popular time of when most of you are interacting with Facebook. So we have these limitations as well. But I do feel that even though we are communicating through Zoom and YouTube and then Facebook and WhatsApp, we share common values. So I feel that we share the importance of authenticity as we honor the teachings of B.K.S. Iyengar and the Iyengar family. We feel that we have to stick to something that has deep experience, that is based on texts, that is not just made up. And I felt during sessions that we have this approach of questioning and then realizing what is really there and what is, maybe, I wouldn't say fake, but maybe not as real. I also feel that we share a sense of community. So I already said this, but I will say it again, as we foster connections between members of the group. And there is a sense of worldwide wide teachers and practitioners that are reading together, that are sharing ideas together, which is quite amazing for me. And I think that we also share, we realize that there is an importance of the depth of inquiry. So we read and we reread and we ask questions, and you ask me questions and I ask you questions. So it's an ongoing inquiry and not just reading, saying, okay, it's true, whatever is written there, I believe it, and we move on, but that we really try to integrate what we read into whatever we feel and practice. And sometimes I can share from my own experience, I am left with open questions. And that's also fine. Not everything needs to be clear. And these questions, they keep on working on me as I practice. And sometimes I get an aha moment when I practice, and sometimes I don't. And I have these questions just being with me for some time. So I just want to share some numbers about yoga readers, and we have grown a lot from our previous book, uh, Light on Life, going to Tree of Yoga. I don't know what made it grow. I don't know if some of you sent it to your Iyengar Yoga associations. I don't know if you put posts on Facebook about it, but it really grew. So as of today, we have 200 members that have joined our newsletter. So in the previous book, we did not have a newsletter. This is something that came as a request from members, that they would like to have something that is very organized, concluding the previous reading that we had, and then having the focused questions for the next reading, and having the extra focus that I had these highlights about yogic terms or philosophical themes or mythological stories, have that extra in the newsletter as well. And then the newsletter also contained links to our session recordings and an invitation to put the next session in your Google Calendar so you can see the next session's timing with your local time. That really helped people. So that was the newsletter, and it's growing. From every newsletter I'm sending out, more people are joining, and I'm really happy that it helps some of you to keep it organized. Over 250 members joined our WhatsApp group. The WhatsApp group is mainly for getting notifications. So I'm sending out 2 to 3 inspirational quotes from whatever we are reading. And there are also reminders about the reading schedule And if I put an emphasis or a highlight on a term or a mythological story, so I also send it through WhatsApp. And then there are these reminders about our upcoming sessions and sometimes even polls like I had for this session. And we have over 900 members that have joined our Facebook group. And there are many, many more watching the recordings on YouTube. And I'm very grateful to have reached so many people that are enjoying our sessions, enjoying our reading. I really feel that it's enriching many people's lives just to get in touch with Iyengar's writings. And I'm very happy with those of you who are joining our Zoom sessions and sharing your thoughts and questions on Zoom sessions or in the Facebook group or even sending me WhatsApp messages. That's really great. So would you like to see some numbers? I prepared these statistics that we have. So one of the things I was interested in is what motivated people to join. And the main motivations was to deepen the understanding about yoga, philosophy, and theory, which is quite relatable as we are reading books about yoga and not just practicing them. Now, the second most popular motivation was to integrate yogic principles into our everyday life. And I feel that in these two books that we've read, this is really easy for us because the terms that we are reading are relatable as we get these everyday examples of how to implement these theoretical terms into our lives. Then there are also two more motivations. One was to discuss with other people who are interested in yoga and to get inspiration from quotes and discussions. So I hope that it was inspirational enough for you. And then there was a question of what were you hoping to gain from participation in the community? And the majority said to get new insights following the reading. So I'm very interested. Did you get new insights? Was this, did it work for you? And the second thing that most of you hope to gain was to learn more about yoga's theory and philosophy, which was, of course, linked to the motivation that I mentioned before. And the third most popular thing that you wanted to gain was having interesting discussions with community members. For me, I had a really good time and interesting discussions with all of you. Now, our community is really diverse regarding countries of origin. So the majority is from Europe and then the United States. But we have people from around the world, from Asia, from Australia and New Zealand, from Africa, and of course, the Middle East, and many, many more countries. Most of the members of the community are over 40 and even over 60. So these are seasoned practitioners, mature people who are interested in reading, and I'm really glad about it. So I'll stop here. There are more examples and statistics that I find really interesting. But perhaps this is a good time for you to share what did you get from these sessions, and what are you hoping to get as we move forward? Maybe you have ideas that I can implement in our next reading. Maybe you have questions. Please feel free to open your microphone, or you can even write in the chat.
I'll begin. I think my microphone's open. First of all, I am impressed, amazed with your depth of knowledge. But more than that, well, also your ability to bring it to my level. I have never felt, a lot of times I don't get it, but I don't feel that way with this group. I really like when you've included the mythological stories, which I'm not familiar with at all. And those have brought me a whole new, just a whole new depth, I guess, or ideas, or where this comes from. So I have found that really interesting.
Thank you. So I'll keep on doing that as well.
Yes.
I will say some words. I agree with Maureen that your knowledge is phenomenal, Agi, and it really blows my mind. So thank you. I'm glad you're in my life. What I have to say about the last book we read will be the same as that I said about the first book we read together, which is, for me, I rather have more. First of all, I don't like the spacing. The spacing is too between one session and the other. I forget. So I would like for us to meet like every week and not every 2 weeks, because if it stretches for too long, I forget what I read. I'm not in focus anymore. And I would have liked to go deeper. In other words, to maybe read a third of a chapter every time and discuss it. In other words, go more into details. The reason I'm saying it is because I'm not autodidactive, so I need that support. So I need more time so we can go deeper. Other than that, and I also don't know if I can ask it because you're doing it for free. So basically, even if you don't change at all, I'll still be your admirer and continue coming to the classes because it's wonderful. But if you really want to know, now I told you the truth. So there.
So Michal would like to have a session once a week and to have smaller pieces that we dissect each chapter into. Okay, this is something I'm also thinking about, because actually what we're doing is I'm choosing bits that we are reading, and then there are bits that are left out. We are not reading each paragraph together.
No, of course not.
But it's something to think about. So thank you, Michal, for that. And
Thank
the
you.
spacing, I keep on thinking about that. Is 2 weeks per chapter enough? Some people ask for more time because they can't keep up with the reading, so they need 3 weeks or maybe 1 month for each chapter. And others just read it in 2 or 3 days, and they want to have more frequent sessions. So it's something that I'm thinking about how to go about it. So I'll just share. There are some testimonials that some of you have written me about your experience in yoga readers. I won't read them out, but I will just say that I'm very happy with how we are evolving and how we are creating like this space. I really feel that when I'm reading the book, I'm not reading it. I am reading it alone in my room, but I feel like I'm part of a greater community that is reading together at the same pace. So I feel this sense of connection. And one of the most rewarding things for me was to hear how this space has impacted your own practice, how you got insights and how you passed it on to your students, and how this motivated you to come back to the book. So many of us have these books on our shelves, but we don't go to them, we don't reach, we don't open, we don't read them, we don't reread them. So this was like an opportunity to many of you to reread the Tree of Yoga. So some have shared how these readings changed their approach to their own practice when they go on the mat. And I did emphasize during this reading whenever Iyengar mentioned certain postures. So how can we understand a certain term or an approach or an idea through a specific example of a specific posture, and I felt that was really helpful. And some told me that they appreciated the understanding the philosophy behind Iyengar yoga. So how they knew that there is the philosophy of yoga and that there is the practice of Iyengar yoga, but then understanding how they integrate through the words of Guruji of B.K.S. Iyengar. And I really enjoyed our journey. I will say that it's not easy all the time. Like Michal said, I'm not asking money for it. So sometimes it's more easy, sometimes it's more challenging it's just life. But it gives me a lot of energy hearing from you how this impacts you and not only me. So let's continue to our second part, which is concluding the reading of the Tree of Yoga. So over the past month, we have immersed ourselves in the Tree of Yoga, and I feel that it was a chance to reabsorb Iyengar's wisdom on both the practice and the philosophy and just the yogic way of life. And we read there were so many themes in each part, right? So we began looking at the metaphor of the tree in order to understand Ashtanga yoga, and we realized that the roots and the bark, they are necessary to have branches and to have flowers and leaves. So we need the moral conduct as the basics to yoga, but then we cannot rush the leaves we cannot rush the flowers or the fruit. We can just do what is necessary, and then maybe we'll have enough flowers and we'll have the fruits of our practice, but maybe not. So understanding that it's not really a hierarchy with the Ashtanga yoga, with the 8 limbs of yoga, but it's this interconnectedness of the 8 limbs. But at the same time, you do need to have your basics. Like you need branches before you have the leaves, I guess. So not going too deeply into the metaphor, we discussed the metaphor of the tree, and then we went on in part 2, looking more into how asana practice and pranayama practice is like a gateway into the other layers of yoga, and how it's not that we do the asana, the pranayama, and then we go deeper, but through the practice of asana pranayama that we reach the deeper layers of our being. We also discussed yoga and health, and how yoga can help many health issues and bodily needs. Then we discussed the role of meditation, what meditation is and what it is not. And we discussed how meditation for Iyengar is an integration of the different levels of our being, and how it's not about sitting quietly with closed eyes and like meditating, but he called it meditation in action. So just the way we are practicing yoga, if our mind is there, if our attention is there, if we have this viveka, this intelligent discrimination, then that is meditation in action. Then we read about how the yoga practice is this journey from the body to the soul. And there is this famous saying of Iyengar, how the body is the bow and the asana is the arrow and the target is the soul. So how through bodily practices of yoga postures, we move inward and we get closer to our Atman, or the soul, or our core being. And then in the last part, we discussed how yoga is a form of art, which was quite maybe surprising to some of us, because it is not an art of performance, but art in the sense of having a certain skill, then having aesthetic qualities to it. Yoga as being something that is creative and it has a self-expression. and then self-exploration as well. And in that part, we also read about the role of teachers, and we discussed that as well, the importance of being a good teacher. And then he said something about teachers' assessments as well. And we discussed the integrity of teachers. So as a whole, this book was a great journey, I feel. And I'll go back to what Eyal Shifroni said, and we read this in the introduction as well, that this book is different from other books of Iyengar because it's based on talks that he gave to Western audience during the 80s. So we can, as we read the book, we can actually hear Iyengar's words through the book. So it's written very similarly to the way that he gave the talk, the way he spoke. So it's a bit with these ideas weaved into it, and the ideas are explained, but not as one would explain it if he sat down and wrote something, but it's more a conversation. So it's maybe more relatable in that sense. Would you like to read out a passage from the Tree of Yoga that echoed with you, that you really liked, that was important to you?
It's page 147, and it's the movement of moments. The movements of moments is seen in the waking thoughts, the rising thoughts, and restrained thoughts. The person of mature intellect tries to live in the moment without being caught in the movement of rising and fading thoughts. The movement is the past and future. The moment is the present. For me, that is the first explanation of being the present moment, which is said very often, but for the first time, it makes sense to me. So that I have underlined and shared. I mean, it goes on, but the thought that the movement is what does not make it present. Well, anyway, that for me, that was important.
Thank you, Maureen. Megan?
Yes, I'll share something. This is on page 14, about the East and the West, and the statements about halfway through. It says, "Do not make distinctions, saying that you are doing better yoga than this or worse yoga than that. Yoga is one as the world is one, and the people of the world are one." And so that statement, although I loved many things about the book, that was like a very early on kind of an ego check for me, because I have moved around. I'm in the United States and I've moved from city to city a bit. And so finding a yoga studio, I've kind of noticed myself being like, I don't like this yoga studio because of XYZ. Or, we briefly talked about this with the conversation with Eyal, was that how his name, I believe, about the dilution of yoga and how it's become very popularized and some of its tradition has been lost. And so I almost found myself, being so judgmental as I would walk into different spaces. And that was like a really big kind of a gut check for me to like get rid of that as I'm exploring and truly thinking about it as a journey and as a practice, and that I can gain something from all of these spaces, opposed to approaching it from kind of this judgmental mindset. So that was really humbling for me to read that section.
So how can you apply it? Because I have similar experiences with the judginess and then with the exploration. One of my favorite things is when I go abroad, I just go to an Iyengar yoga class, wherever it is. And I came to realize that the spaces are so different And the practices of how you come in, where do you take your blanket from, what do you do at the end of the class with your props, it's so different. Sometimes the props are outside of the room, sometimes they are near the teacher. So if you come late, you will disturb the teachings, and so on and so on. So how did you transition from judginess to exploration, appreciation?
Yeah. Um, I really just kind of had a shift in my mindset and reframing that, like, um, I am here to practice everything I have learned while also learning and absorbing whatever that teacher has to offer. And I somewhat shifted it from being like just a vessel and like consuming and learning everything from them, to kind of being a co-creator along the way. So you know, even if they weren't cueing things in the way that I was used to, or maybe a little bit more of like surface level cues, I would still say like, well, Megan, you know these other cues that you want the teacher to be saying, right? So just do those, right? They don't have to cue you in a certain way if you already know in your head what additional cues would be for that pose or something like that. Um, so that really helped, you know, recognizing that like I have this knowledge within me and I can use it to co-create with whatever they are providing. And then, yeah, with just different spaces and stuff, I don't have access to Iyengar spaces here. And so I've been a little bit more open to other types of practices. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Katona yoga, but that has been I have found a Katona yoga teacher, which they focus on alignment and positioning and props in a much different way. So I've had to kind of break out of the rigid nature of like, you know, it can only be an Iyengar studio because I haven't had access to them, or, you know, so Katona yoga has been one, or some of my previous teachers were more Anusara style teachers. And so I've kind of had to just remove that rigidity from my mindset, because at the end of the day, it's about my journey and practice. And I don't need to necessarily look external for that, that I can, you know, find that from within. And that external is kind of an added benefit.
Well, thank you for sharing and thank you for participating. So should we move on to our next reading then? Are you curious to find out what is our next book? Do you have any guesses? Okay, so the big reveal. Let's do it like this. So we finished this one and we're going for this one. So we're going to read Yoga, a Gem for Women by Geeta Iyengar, who was the daughter of B.K.S. Iyengar. And this book changed my life completely. I based my PhD dissertation on this book. This book is a must, I think, for everyone who is practicing yoga. Most of the practitioners of yoga today worldwide are women. So the numbers were 75, 72%, according to a survey by Yoga Journal. And in Europe, I realized that the numbers are higher than that. So there is a great majority of women in yoga classes, and most yoga teachers are women. So what Geeta did in the 80s is that she gathered all her information or all the data she collected about how should yoga accommodate women, and she put it into writing. Now, what I did in my dissertation is I started from this book, and then with the background I have in Iyengar Yoga, and of course, this is based on Light on Yoga. This book is similar to Light on Yoga because of the many pictures it has in it of practice. And then not only the pictures that do remind us of light on yoga, but there are sections that just explain the asana, then how to practice it, why should one practice it, when should one not practice it, and so on. So it has a very big technical part to it, like light on yoga, but here it is adapted to women's needs. So I was interested in how it shifted. So how did she take the knowledge from light on yoga and shifted it to accommodate women? And then after this book came out, the practices evolved. So when she talks here in this book about women's life cycles, she mentions 3. But then in the 90s, she gathered a conference with over 60 teachers. I think one of them is here. If you'd like to share with us your experience from that gathering, I would appreciate it a lot. But if not, it's okay. So Geeta Iyengar had a women intensive in Pune with Iyengar teachers from many countries around the world. And there she discussed 6 cycles in a woman's life. And then during the 2000s, her female students, wrote books and published books about yoga for women, whether it's in a holistic way, just about women's practice, or specialized books about menstruation and pregnancy. And since 2010, we have a book about menopause as well. So good for that. So what I did was to go more deeply into these teachings to understand what are the needs of women. Why is there a need for a book specializes with women's practice? Isn't yoga for all? So historically, no, it was not for all. It was practiced mainly by men. And it was taught mainly by men. If you think about it, Gita's teacher was a man. Iyengar's teacher was a man. His teacher was a man. And this goes back whether to Patanjali or to the Rishi. It goes back to a male lineage. So there was a need to adapt. And this book also it was a revolution in a way because it told women you are welcome. When you are menstruating, you can come to class. If you have fertility issues, you can come to class. If you're pregnant, you can come to class. If you're going through menopause, you can come to class. Like there is a place for you. Whatever you are going through, you can come and practice yoga, which is amazing to me. So what I was thinking that we will do during the reading of this book is that we'll go through the chapters. Maybe I'll divide them a bit differently, but we will go by how she wrote it down. And the first few bits or chapters are more about the philosophy of yoga, how should one practice. And whenever we read, this is for women, I'm talking now to the men in our group, it also talks about, in a way, then what should men do? And I should say that in Iyengar yoga writings, there are sequences for men. There is Iyengar yoga for men, so specific sequences for men. And I would like to also quote Lois Steinberg that in her book, the women's yoga book that she wrote with Geeta Iyengar, she mentions that this sequence is meant for women in whatever condition, but she used it for one of her students who had testicular cancer. So the pelvis is the pelvis, and we all have our pelvic floor and so on. So the practices designed for women, let's say, can be applied to men in certain conditions as well. So please, men in yoga readers, you can join us. Don't leave. This is the book for everyone to learn from. There are parts about the mythology of, there are different stories going from the Puranas and the Mahabharatas and the Upanishads. And I do hope that we have time to present these women that gave inspiration to Geeta and she saw them as a lineage of yoginis. And then we'll go into the cycles of women's life. And wherever I will feel that the text is partial, like she wrote something in the 80s, but then the idea was evolved, it developed later, I can add whatever knowledge I have from my 7-year research about it. And whenever I can share with you the academic papers that I wrote about pregnancy or menstruation regarding Iyengar yoga practice, I will happily do that as well. And then when we will go into reading the bits about the asana practice, well, that would be a bit tricky, but I feel that there is a lot to learn from it. It is a bit more technical than the books that we already read, but I hope with the right focus questions, we can read through like let's say specific postures or look into what pose is missing, what would you expect it to have and it's not there, or what surprised you in the postures that are there, or something about the sequencing perhaps, so we can go about it a bit differently. And then maybe we can even practice some postures like by the book and see if it works for us, maybe posture variations, that could be interesting. So it would be easier to connect with our yoga practice in a way. This book touches on menstruation, pregnancy, and menopause. And also it touches on advanced practice, which is an interesting topic in itself. She also has an article like, why should we practice advanced postures? That's something that we can ask ourselves. There is a portion about yoga kurunta, or yoga with ropes, which is basically Eyal's next book. So it's also a good timing to read about that. And I'm really thrilled to read with you this magnificent book. In Israel, it was out of stock. Like you could not buy it in the books. So it is being republished because I asked for it to be, because there is such a big reading audience in Israel. So I hope that many people will be rereading Yoga Gem for Women. I believe it's available on Amazon and on other websites, and it's available in many languages as well. So let me hear your thoughts about this. Do you have the book?
Agi, I have a first edition. Do you think that will make a difference? Should I get the latest edition?
Well, you could if you want, but
Right.
the first edition will work.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone here who has never heard of the book? Have never heard of the book? Yoga Gem for Women? Everyone is familiar with the book? Okay. Okay, great. So we can wrap it up then. Any last words? Well, when we will start reading? About April. I hope that we can start in April. So I think it's a good idea to let the Tree of Yoga to sink in, and then to prepare ourselves to the next reading. Some of you need to get the book. And I think that in April it will be feasible to begin the reading, and we will have a communal gathering before actually starting the reading. So I'll give you out the reading schedule and maybe another introduction. We have a website now with the sessions really clearly marked in it, and every session has the session recording after, of course, we have the session and the focus questions. So I'm trying to get it very organized, because people are letting me know that sometimes they see the notifications on Facebook and WhatsApp, and sometimes they get lost in too much information. So I think having a very organized website is crucial and helpful, I hope. And then having the newsletter as well, like wrapping up whatever we discussed and then what is the next step. It is a lot of work, so if you would like to help, I would appreciate it. If there is anyone online or offline who is interested in helping, that would be great.
How can I help? I don't get it.
How?
Yes.
Well, there is a lot of work that I'm putting in, let's say, behind the stage. So preparing for sessions, communicating. So just, it's a good thing, Michal, that you want to help. Let's stay in contact and I will let you know.
Okay.
Great.
Sure. If I
Thank you.
can, I will help.
Okay, so thank you all. And I hope to see you in our next reading session or communal gathering before we start the reading.
Thank you, Agi. You're lovely. Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate this feeling of real people to communicate with.
Thank you.
And in this world that is being torn apart, it's so great to be sure there's something unconditional, like real wisdom we can share.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.